And here we are. Yes, ideas, inspiration, tutorials. That's what Mondo is about. If this is your very first time here, hello, I am Shahar Boyaya. I'm going to be your host today. And Mondo is a limited series of interviews with mixed media artists all around the world. And they have one thing in common. They use a line of products called Paverpol. Why is this line special at all? Well, because it is based on a textile hardener that you can create sculptures or 2D pieces and even put them in the weather, like garden sculptures, for example. And it's just impressive what it can do. So we have all these artists and they come with us and they shared their inspiration, they share their pieces, they give a quick tutorial, and this is going to happen today. Now, during this broadcast, you're going to be seeing some websites on the bottom. So you're going to be seeing paverpolamerica.com, where that is for the US, paverpolcanada.ca for Canada, paverpol.com for all the other countries, and of course, Orange Wire Art. I may be wrong on that address, but it's going to be showing which is our guest website. So anytime you feel like you want to go and check the products, go to one of these websites depending on where you are in the world, right? It's available through distributors, so you don't find in craft stores, for example. The other thing I want you to know is that we are live, and always the main reason we are live is because we love when you interact with us. You have a chat box either beside or below the video where you're watching, or even a comment box if you're on social media. Use that to submit questions anytime you feel like it. You're going to be really inspired today because she is an amazing artist. She's going to be showing some of her pieces. So anytime you have a question, put it there. And then I'll get here on my computer, I'll ask her, and she will answer directly to you. Okay, so don't let this chance pass you by, because we want you to, really get to know what this art is about. And of course, if you have a second, share this interview. This is content only, nothing's going to be sold here, so it's safe for you to post on groups, post on social media, on your profile, for example. If you see there a post that we have done, you can also go and comment. All these things happen, they help a lot. So please do that, okay? I think those are all my announcements for this moment. So I want to introduce you to Annette Holiak. Welcome, Annette. And she doesn't have
Hi,
sound.
everybody.
Oh, there you go. Your voice disappeared for a second. Do you mind repeating what you just said?
Hi, Shahar. Hi, everybody. Nice
I'm
to be
good.
here.
Annette, where are you talking from?
So I live in Chilliwack, British Columbia, and yeah, that's where I'm talking from. We've been living here now in Chilliwack since 2005 when we immigrated. Lovely place.
I know. I have a friend that goes to British Columbia very often. She says it's the most amazing place in the world. Now, Annette, tell me a little bit about you and arts. Tell me how you got interested in that, at what age, and what have you been doing since then?
So let's put this out, and I think that that's why I love this medium so much. I'm not an artist, and I know people are gonna say, "Yeah, sure," but no, I'm not. Before I immigrated, like I said, 2005, I was a teacher economics at a college in Holland, and I was not crafty. If I were to make a drawing, I would be able to do stickman, but that's it. And then before we emigrated, my sister-in-law wanted to do me a class. She said, "Yeah, we're gonna make a garden sculpture because Paverpol originates in the Netherlands, right?"
Hmm.
And I had never heard of it. Anyways, I didn't do the course. We immigrated, and then I wasn't allowed to work the first 2 years. And I thought, you know what? I should do a class. Couldn't find Paverpol. And that's
Uh-huh.
kind of how it started.
Wow. Now, I heard this. I'm not artistic before, and I think it's interesting because economics tends to be a left brain activity, right? While arts it tends to be the right brain activity. But I found over the years at Curious Mondo that engineers they make awesome artists, for example, and they have the same setup. They just process everything that they do in a different way. Like they are more, they many times are interested more in the process or the testing part of it. Is that the same with you?
Totally. For me, so I'm not very accurate. You would say that you need that in economics, but on the other hand, I cannot follow patterns that well.
Uh huh.
So for me, this is perfect because I do whatever and it usually comes out pretty good. And that's what I tell students as well. Um, Follow whatever you feel like doing. That's what you do. And then for me, apart from the creative part, I am interested in the structure. It has to have good bones in order to be able to go outside and withstand the weather, especially when the sculptures are getting a little bit bigger. So in that respect, yeah, I'm also one of the a sturdy structure, and then after that, I just go,
Go
yeah,
with the
it's
flow.
yeah, I go with the flow. And I usually when I use fabrics like t-shirts, old t-shirts, that's how I started, and I always demonstrate it to people too. The fabric does it for you. It's yeah.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see all the pieces you have there for us. But you mentioned you originally you were from Holland. What brought you to Canada?
Yeah, that's a good one. It's sense of adventure. Life is short. There's so many beautiful places in the world. So it wasn't really a very thought through thing. It's we love nature. We love
Hmm.
skiing, biking, things like that. And yeah, Holland is what is it, 17 million people on a very small surface. And I love Holland. I mean, I love to go back every year, but here it's it's you'll see it later in the little video, and that's why I focused more on the nature in my video about the city than the city itself, because yeah, it's all around us here. It's the mountains, it's the rivers, and 5 minutes out of here, and yeah, you can walk for weeks if you want to. And we're close to the border, so it's convenient. We can cross over. Well, not now, but we used to
Yeah,
be able to cross over very easily. So no, it's a beautiful place to live, and it has everything that we wanted out of life. Yeah,
that's so
yeah,
good. That's so cool. Talking about, we talked about Holland and Canada. Would you like to know the countries that are watching us today?
yeah, for sure.
So right now we have US, UK, Canada, Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, Argentina, Bahamas, Portugal, Ireland, South Africa, Norway, Greece, Germany, Philippines, Russia, and Egypt. It's so amazing there are so many people interested in creation, in creating new things. Don't you think so?
It's just flabbergasting that so many people log in, and I notice I follow your shows, whoever is
Uh-huh.
on, right, most of the time, and I think your list is getting longer and longer every time you have a broadcast.
Oh yeah, you should see it, at some point you will be able to come here to the studio and we have a map at the entrance and we put pins every time we know a new country is watching. And it is really impressive to us as well because we are this tiny company in Utah. And I remember when I moved here, a lot of people would come to me and say, why Utah? Like, why would you go there, right? And it's an amazing place. And today we look at that and say, wow, it's just amazing what technology and a lot of work can do. Now, Annette, tell me one thing. I want you to show us two or three pieces, but I want you to tell me what really inspires you when it comes to creating new pieces.
Um, that's a good one. It's not always this or that that inspires me. I must say that I get inspired a lot by what I see around me. It can be sculptures, on a village square, or I can see it maybe online. Sometimes an object inspires me. For instance, I've got here. These are, I don't know if you can see it.
Wow.
It's a wine barrel ring, and so we bought an old wine barrel.
Uh-huh.
See, this is making wings.
Gorgeous.
That's what I'm gonna show today. How you can make wings.
Oh,
But yeah, so in this case, for instance, yeah, I was buying a planter, an old wine barrel, and this lady had all these wine barrel rings. So she said, "Do you want some?" And then I
oh,
thought, "Oh, that would be awesome." So then I have a ring, and then I
uh-huh.
think, what can I do with it? And then, so yeah,
Great.
that's how it
That's awesome.
happened. And
Very
and the,
good.
and the funny thing is, it's so it looks. I always find things like this look impressive,
Mm-hmm.
but you know how it goes, because you've all seen it probably multiple times. It's just that wire skeleton and foil, and then this girl is just merely strips of t-shirts. That's all she is.
Oh,
And then
really?
only for the wings, I use the yarn.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just those strips. And if you really would look up close, it's not very detailed.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just the outline, and the fact that she's in this wine barrel, I
Yeah.
think makes it an interesting piece. So also, I walk the dog a lot here on the lake, and then I find driftwood. Of course,
Oh, yeah.
you might have seen this one. It's a variation to the owl that you see here behind me, that I did for
A fiber symposium.
Fiber Symposium last year, I think it was.
Yes.
So sometimes it's the driftwood that inspires me. And again, and then so this one started with, oh, I've got this nice bended piece
Of
of
wood.
driftwood. What do I do with it? And then I think, oh, well, I might see an owl in my studio. And then I think, oh, maybe I can fit an owl in there. So usually when I make something, I make it a few times. So I would have the owl behind me. I would have it. This one is made with clay, the rose clay that the camera is messing me up a little bit. Yeah. With the rose clay and just some old buttons that I
Mm.
find.
Wow.
So yeah, what inspires me, it could be anything. It could be somebody else's work. It could be the metal, the wood.
What you find when you're going around, that's awesome. This is one of the things that attract me a lot to this type of medium, is that it also allows you to give a new purpose to things, right? Like you did with the wine ring, the wine barrel ring, or the driftwood, right? So it's like we give a new purpose to things and create out of art out of that, which I think is a great way of making art, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Don't throw anything out, because for the longest time I had this box with old buttons for my
uh-huh.
mom. I dragged it to Canada, had this old box, and then I thought at one point, okay, box of buttons. I've never ever used one button. So I threw it out.
Uh-huh.
And then not even maybe a month later, I work on this owl, and I think, oh, I could use some metal buttons or whatever buttons. And
Uh-huh.
then I think, oh, I threw them out. So yeah.
Yes, I know the feeling. My daughter actually, she cringes everybody every time somebody says, "Don't throw anything out," because she thinks I do. I'm a hoarder, which I'm not at all. But I know instructors here that are 10 times worse than I am. But she sometimes said, "No, no, no, you don't need to collect anything." But you never know, right? There's going to be a moment where those things will just be perfect for that.
Yes.
I have a comment here from Deborah. The statues behind you are beautiful. And Avni, how do you treat driftwood before using in your artwork?
So I usually let it dry really good. So yeah, I let it dry to make
Hmm.
sure that there's no water in the wood left, if that's possible. But I mean, I let it dry for at least a couple of months. And then I started working on it. I don't treat the driftwood myself. I let it go. I must say, most of my sculptures are indoors because when I teach classes, if I have them all spread out over the yard, not everybody's going to see it. So most of my sculptures remain indoors, although I have lots outside as well. But with the driftwood, most of those are hanging in my studio. If I were to have it outside all the time, I would just, after it, the whole piece, so including the sculpture and the driftwood, after everything has dried and cured, for at least 2 weeks, the sculpture itself, then I suggest a satin varnish on the driftwood just to prevent it from cracking. Because over time, if it's in the sun, the wood would start to crack. So I would varnish it to maintain it a little bit longer. I'm not going to say that wood is going to last forever. I mean, in 10 years' time or 15 years' time, that driftwood could be, start to deteriorate a little bit. But a good outdoor varnish would help a lot. And then while we're talking about varnish, maybe I can add something to that. So the sun, the UV is so strong that whether it is your driftwood or your sculpture, I always say, you know what, varnish it again after 2, 3 years because UV eats everything away. So if you have a nice sculpture, and even if you sell it, just tell the people you sell it to, you know what, it is an art of nature, and everything outside, even the siding on your house, that discolors too, and over time would deteriorate if you don't treat it right. So with a sculpture, after 2 years, varnish it again, and I would do the same with the driftwood.
That's a great tip, actually. Because it is true, everything that is outside will fade over time. So it's a great way to take care of your pieces. Thank you. And then what do you say if we take people on a city tour with you?
Sure, sounds good. It's more green tour than city tour, I must say.
That's my favorite kind of tour. So
Okay.
let's watch this.
So this is Chilliwack, home for me. Short distance from our home, there is a walking trail where I love to let the dog out, and I'll take you on a little bit of a trip along the river that we have running close to our home. The water is really high now because it's a warm day. Well, it has been warm days. Normally people sit here on the banks of the river making a fire, barbecuing, going in tubes down the river, but not today. It's too dangerous now. Coming back home, I'll show you where I have my studio. But I'll go through the garden first. This is the Raven. It's all made with Paverpol, some fabric, and this was such a fun project to make. I gave him some details. Love his feet too. And what else do I have that's Paverpol around here? That's a frog. It's an oldie. But yeah, what it is, it's just a big styrofoam ball. Or whatever you can find. And all the features are aluminum foil shaped.
Wow.
Arms, aluminum foil. This is aluminum foil. These are a few dowels, wooden dowels that are just broke and covered with foil. The fingers, just some wire with a little bit of foil on the top, and then the rest is Paverpol, Paverplast and Paversand, and then painted. Use a topper. Lots of people liking, but it's a big project, but fun to do. no tutorial for that one. And this is an old one too, when I first had our dog. This is Molly. Molly only has a back, so you cannot see her from the front. But she sits on the deck and she looks out. And what else do I have here? It's the succulent cat. It's early in the season, so the succulents haven't fully developed. They're still recovering from the winter. But yeah, this part is just chicken wire with moss, in which I stuck succulent and then filled the void with dirt for soil. And the rest is Paverpol, Paverplast, wire, some metal for the, what do you call those things? Not sure. You know what it is. So yeah, you can do it as a cat. I also made a few as a rooster. That's the cat. And then this was last year's project. This lady, I just watered her, so the vine is a little bit droopy. But yeah, she only has a body and head and arms, and the bottom part is just a flower pot in which I grew a vine. Huge, she's as big as I am. I use those swimming tubes for the legs. Took her over to the shades, so she's sitting on a really tall metal chair, and yeah, just your regular figure, only I made the dress out of Paverpol clay. Simple, just all grey Paverpol, Paverplast, and then some slabs of Paverpol clay for the head, the dress, and the boots. There's the dog again. So I have 3 of them in a row, just sitting somewhere between my plants, but I think you see it better this way. So yeah, these are the projects that I have in the garden. So now we're standing halfway to where we live. We live down in the south there. And yeah, this is Tilburg, surrounded by mountains, as I said earlier. Farm country, lots of dairy farmers, berry farmers. Yeah, hop lately. And this is looking west.
Yeah, it's not us.
Okay, chili walk is absolutely amazing, but I have to give a wow to that frog because oh my gosh, it's unbelievable how cool it is, that one. Amazing. Now tell me
Yeah.
two things, Annette. First of all, the name of your dog.
That's Molly.
Molly, okay. And the big fish, it looks like a catfish to me. I'm not sure. But is that your family that is holding the fish?
No, actually, I should have said that in between. It's I wanted to show that Chilliwack is more than just farmland, because there's lots of people do lots of fishing here. Okay, the fish that you see there now it skipped my mind. It's those prehistoric fish that they catch here, and they release
Uh-huh.
them again. I forgot the name.
Oh,
Maybe it will come back to me. So they do that a lot here too. So it's skiing, fishing, hiking, that kind of thing. So that's why I included the picture of people catching
uh-huh.
the big fish. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Amazing, amazing place, amazing place. It reminded me a little bit of Montana here. We have some spots
yeah.
that have that luscious green as you have there, but absolutely beautiful place. I have a few questions for you. Penny Platt is asking, Annette, do you still have the draped lady's head out on the porch? Would you show it? I love to make that in a class.
Oh, you mean, I think she means it's a styrofoam shaped head, and I draped it all with fabrics. No, I don't have her anymore. I hardly ever sell my work because I think I mentioned it earlier. Once I like something, I want to keep it because it's a good example for when I teach classes or
Hmm.
I want to explain something. So when we moved a couple of years ago, I had so many sculptures. I had to sell some. So no, I don't have her anymore.
Oh, so I understood then that your business is giving classes, correct?
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And how are you able to give in-person classes right now? How has the pandemic affect you and Chiliwag?
Yeah, so apart from the distributor, no, sorry, apart from teaching classes, I'm also the distributor for British Columbia.
Hmm.
So when the pandemic hit, I shut the workshops down. Usually I had about two, three a week. I shut it down and then we were able to start again, but then with masked. So I started with a max of three people in a class and then everybody sitting apart and then we were shut down again. So at that point, I just closed the part of teaching classes altogether because it was, starting up and you need to book classes again. People, you need to promote it again with the dates, and then you have to cancel. So it was a lot of hassle. So I said, no, I'm shutting down until July, which is now, and then I'll reassess. So, but in the meantime, I could see that lots of people were doing things at home because, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, people would buy supplies and they would watch videos probably through you and other sources.
Hmm.
And I think the first month of the pandemic that it really was shut down, I think that was April last year. I don't think I had more sales ever than in that month, combined with classes and online shopping. So, anyways, after I shut down, it was just selling products online. So I would be shipping, but no classes. And now it's July, and things have gone have loosened up. But I'm not teaching yet. I'm just gonna, I'm going to give it a few more weeks to see what's happening because you hear numbers going up again, and I mean, there's time enough to teach classes again. So for now, it's still down, so to say.
Yeah,
But
okay.
people are
No,
asking all the time.
yes, I know, because people are anxious to, getting with people again, of course. And although yeah, we are seeing the same thing here, numbers are going up, and many people don't understand how much work it goes into promoting an event of any type, be online, be an in-person class. So I'm with you that it's wise to wait a few more weeks to see how it goes. But if we could, now one thing that you said that happened to us as well is people were buying products and they were creating things, which is very good to hear. Because I've met several people that during the pandemic, they stopped making everything. It was like they were stopped in time, just waiting for this phase to end. And it was harder on them. If you keep yourself occupied and you're creating new things and using the products that you have around you, it's always easier, right, to go through this kind of challenge. Now,
Yeah.
Annette, let's pretend last year didn't happen. You probably knew the products when you were in Holland, but you decided, okay, I'm going to become a distributor, sell products, and I'm going to teach classes. Is this a good business model for a person?
Oh yeah, yeah. It worked. It worked for me. I must say that. So I didn't know the product in Holland. I only heard of it. I learned it here in Canada. Actually, back then, the owners of Paverpol, Jossi and Jan de Rode, they came to Calgary to teach a class. And I
Wow.
think there were only so they flew to Canada to teach people that wanted to know about Paverpol, and I just heard about it. I thought, well, let's go. I'm not doing anything anyways because then I wasn't allowed to work. So in that first class, there were only three people. One of them was Brenda Topley,
Ah,
myself, Lise, that she passed away unfortunately, and one other lady. So just the four of us, and that's how it started. So, and I didn't go there to start teaching. I went there because I wasn't allowed to work yet, and I was bored and I was homesick, and my husband said, "You need to do something." So I said, "Okay, you listen to your husband, right?" So I did something, and I took this two-day class, and I thought, "Oh, well, this is easy. I can do this." So I bought some product, took it with me on the plane back home, and I bought also one of the books. And I just went through those books and made sculptures. And I thought, wow, this actually looks pretty good. And there was a Christmas show coming up here in locally in Chilliwack. So yeah, signed up for that Christmas show, intending to sell the sculptures. And then people said, "Oh, so what is it?" And they wanted to know so much about it. And I thought, you know what? The heck with selling. I think I better start teaching. So yeah, I started promoting classes, and I must say that first year that was a lot of work because you have to put yourself out there and talk a lot and explain to people what it is because it's still a very intriguing but not very well known to everybody product. So I would explain it on, hey, maybe in a local mall, I would have a table and I would tell people about it. And then after a year of constantly doing that, all of a sudden I thought, oh, where do these people, how did they find me, right? But it's that personal connection. I do find that the personal connection, I can promote whatever I want on Facebook, um, but it's mainly the big numbers of people come in because they've seen me somewhere or their friends have seen me. And once that part gets going, word of mouth, and then yes, then social media starts to help, but it's not the first
step.
yeah, it's not the first step. Once that gets going, then yeah, it's a good business. And my studio now is a little bit bigger than it was, so I can have in normal times I could have up to 10 people in the studio teaching yeah, 1 day classes, and it is a good business model. Um, but yeah, like I said, you need to work on it, and because after a couple of years, I thought, you know what, I don't have to go to markets anymore. I'll just, I'm good. And then I noticed it because then less people came in. So I always say, and if I teach an instructor's course as well, you know what? If you really want to teach and make money out of teaching, make sure that they see you, and and I see that working for people that do. Yeah,
Yes,
totally.
yes, you're so right. People tend to cringe when it comes to the marketing part. They think, I don't want to do it, but it is what keeps everything alive. And like you said, as good as social media is, that is not the first step. You have to put yourself out there with
Yeah,
shows, with galleries. Now, what is interesting is that in my perspective, Canada is the country that has promoted Paverpol more than anything else. You have several certified instructors, you have several distributors, but it's still, when you go to a show, to the public is still something very unique, and they get amazed by the fact that you can use textiles and put in the garden. So just imagine in other countries the possibilities that a person has when they start creating their own pieces and putting shows in art walks and things like that. Because I mean, Canada is very big, but it's still, you have a lot of people there that makes the sculptures with Paverpol, and is it still like a total open market? Because
yes.
when the public comes, they are still unfamiliar with what can be done, correct?
Yeah, that is so true. Yeah, it's so in that respect, you hardly have any competition when you start because, and even if there's a couple of people in the same city, I have that here in Chilliwack too because people took instructors courses living here in Chilliwack, and it still works. You're not competitors because everybody has their um, own social bubble,
Yeah.
and some have vacation homes somewhere else, and that's where they teach. And yeah, it's like you say, that's a good expression. It's an open market, and yeah, to
Yeah.
discover still.
And plus, every artist has its own unique take on things, so the pieces will be
Yeah,
different anyway. Now, you
yeah,
mentioned your studio a couple of times. Let's go take a look inside.
yeah.
So we're upstairs, the outside of the studio. I'll just guide you through a few of the sculptures that are out here. This little guy is carrying a rock. And then we go in. It's fairly new. I've been here now 2 years, and the studio is way bigger than I used to have. So it sits at least 10 people if it's not COVID. Not happening now, but yeah. So I'll just go around and show you a few sculptures that I have standing here. These girls are so old. I had them for years, but I really like them. It's art stone and crackled clay. You might have seen the planter legs. These girls, just Paverpol, Paverplast and Paversand. Clay girl. Simple hearts out of foil. Birds. The rooster, you might have seen the rooster. Of course, the winter reindeer. My friend is working on this sculpture in the wine barrel ring. The flowers. Love these girls myself. Burlap and relief decoration. The hat is made out of foil. This one is all wrappers and can be seen, or actually there's a video on my website how to make her. A workshop. Another reindeer. This is also a beginner's piece. Difficult to see with the light. The reader. This one, with the candlelight inspired by Josie de Rode, who made that. This is print, newspaper print cloth, and a simple paper towel holder. She's done with napkins, all Paverpol of course. These little guys sitting on a brick, like her too. All white, Paverpol transparent, and some white in it. Paverpol white. And these are oldies. This workshop, this owl, is a workshop available at Curious Mondo. Check it out. And there's some good oldies. Relief decoration. I love working with the burlap. Gives such a nice effect. T-shirt. All t-shirt is this one. Wrappers. One of my first ones, t-shirt. And an angel. And then up there, some other ones, crackled clay. And stockinette. Relief decoration for the skirt. Just an old sweater, pieces of an old sweater. Again, relief decoration. Pavershrub. Paverscrub. Not sure how you guys pronounce it. It's my Dutch pronunciation. A doily. T-shirt. Pieces of a sweater. See? And wrappers for the head. I love the texture you can create with Paverpol. T-shirts are really good for that. The more folds you create, the better it will look. Again, Pavershrub. And then here, rock bottom. Rock for the butt. She's hanging from a piece of driftwood. And here's some unfinished projects in my corner. I'll quickly pass those. The birds, not sure if you can see them really well. They're in my book, Sculpting with Liquid Polymer. Artstone, mushrooms. Paverpol grey. And yeah, so just aluminum foil hearts, little birds, heron, like this one too. She is made with Paverpol black, burlap, relief decoration, a mop for the hair, and a caroler's head, just paper mache. And then here, girl made with rose clay, so all Paverpol Paverplast for the body, and then I made clay for the dress, the head part, and her boots. And she sits on a long stick, just like the one in the garden, see? So she's great for the garden. And then another few here. This is with napkins. Another owl. This time I used clay and imprinted the clay with various objects to get the texture. And same for his eyes and head. Another rock bottom one, hanging from a long thread, or cable actually. Artstone. I love this effect. I'm really a fan of artstone. I'm a fan of everything. And I think that's about it. A few sculptures here. These are in the making. The long-legged birds. And this is also art stone. It's just a styrofoam ball. And then I used art stone, Paverpol colors. This is just aluminum foil, so a ball wrapped in aluminum foil. These are hanging out there. Mixed media piece. Yeah, that's about it, I think. All the guys on the globe. And that's my studio.
For sure is a great place for classes. I mean, you have a very good space there, but I could look at the sculptures all day long. Now, I notice, so you tend to work with more than one project at a time, is that correct?
You mean me myself working on it, or
Yes, you.
Yeah? So well, usually I have one on the go, maybe two. And sometimes I finish them and they would be made, for instance, in Paverpol black, and then I cannot choose a color. I don't know if any of the whoever is watching has that problem too. I cannot choose a color to paint them in. So sometimes they sit there for 2 months before I get ready to paint them. In that respect, I'm very, I cannot make decisions. So yeah, and then they sit and wait there until I get an inspiration for the color, and then I start something else again. But my head is always full with new ideas, because now I went through that studio and I think, oh yeah, wait a minute, I've got this one still on the go. I need to finish that.
That's so good. That's so good. I actually started a notebook myself when I list all the projects I want to make, because it was driving me crazy. You know, I cannot complete them in time. So then I have all these ideas that they don't allow me to sleep. So I write that down and it's getting better. I have a few comments and questions for you. People is saying, I absolutely love that round with the people standing on top. It might be my favorite. It's different and I love them. Judith, love the crow. Me too. I love that crow. Peeper is saying, wow, that Danida, are the garden sculptures weighted?
Yes. For instance, the frog. The frog was made of two hollow styrofoam balls, and I put a big rock in it. And then the other ones, the succulent cat and the raven, I bolted them. Well, not really bolted them, but they are attached to a big, 6x6 post, and that post is attached to a paving stone. So I go to a home hardware store, buy a big paving stone, then I put a pillar on it, like a 6x6. I connect those two together, and then on top of that goes my sculpture. Because I've had it in the past, if I didn't weigh it down, and it is a big storm, it would fall over, and sometimes, elbows or arms would crack. So yeah, I do weigh them down. So if I make a sculpture that I know is going to go outside, I make them heavier by putting a rock underneath. And even, for instance, I think you saw her in the video. This is a workshop, and people can place them in the garden. Oh, I need to figure out where. But you see, so I left mine hollow here, because that's what I showed the students. And I would weigh this, I would stick a big rock in here, and then fill it up with foil, and then finish it. So then she can sit outside as well.
Very good question. So this one is about when you were giving the studio, not the studio tour, but the city tour. Ebony wants to know, all the figures are amazing. Which colors have you used on the red lady? I think that was the one sitting on the metal chair.
Oh, that was just, so she was made with a combination of black and gray Paverpol. And then I made the clay in the same color, and then I painted it. I think it is called Brilliant Red. and I'm not sure. Well, whatever rich color red you can find. Mine was called Brilliant Red, and then the first layer kind of gets. It's funny because if you paint on black Paverpol, the first coat that you give it kind of seems to be absorbed by the black, and then the color changes a bit. But so I kept on I think it has maybe 2 or 3 layers of that red paint. So I just kept going at it, and then it becomes this really bright color.
People wants to know what's the price of a class in person.
Depends on the length of the class and the size of the sculpture and how many prep work I need to do. For instance, a 4-foot heron that is $200, includes almost all of the supplies except for t-shirt. A smaller figurine, let's say, this size, I always call this the normal, the medium size sculpture. I think at the last class I taught, but that's a year ago, it's 120.
Very good. Sally Mason saying, wow, that's a nice studio. Susan Barr, Annette, such beautiful art and wonderful studio. Liz Bonzer, Annette, do you buy special burlap or craft burlap?
Well, no, I don't special. I heard something yesterday, or maybe it was in the remarks. So this burlap is just this was from the dollar store, or I shouldn't be banning, but anyways, stores like that, and it comes in a roll, and I split it. So my burlap comes from everywhere, and it doesn't always react the same because sometimes it's has a finer mesh than other times. And it depends a little bit on the project that I'm doing, whether I want bigger holes or smaller holes. So the only thing that I think that's important, if it's natural or not, make sure it's burlap.
Okay. Bree wants to know, do you make your own tall metal stands?
Yeah, for the longest time I made them just by drilling holes in a paving stone, and you can still do that, no problem. But as my classes started to grow and more often, and sometimes I would drill on an angle, so then the sculpture would lean a little bit this way. So I stopped doing that, and now so what I do, I go to the local metal shop, and then I say, hey, I need these stands. So they make them for me, and I ask them, only when you have time, work on them, because then they can charge something less because they use their downtime when there's not so much orders to make. Then they work on it. Slowly over time, that became more expensive too. But now I'm actually thinking of going to schools where they teach metal classes. And they sometimes need projects that students can learn how to read, let's say, instructions and make it multiple times just to get the experience of welding things together. So if you want to have them made, let's say 20 or more, I usually order them by 100 or the small ones by 400. But yeah, go to a school, a local school that might be able to make them for you.
That's an awesome tip. Very good. Danita, Annette, do you have to glue the objects separately, or does the Paverpol hold them securely?
Paverpol holds things together. So I'm not sure which one she was referring to, if that was one of mine. But no, if I want to have 2 sculptures sticking together, then I would make them individually and then make sure I've got a good layer of Paverpol. Actually, even better would be, if you want to have a real good glue, is Paverpol and Paverplast. So brush a little bit of that mix between 2 sculptures, stick them together, and then they stick for life.
That's very good. Now, Annette, tell me a little bit about the tutorial that you have prepared for us.
Yeah, so it's making wings. I've noticed over the years that lots of people like to make ferries. And in the beginning, I would use products like Stocky Net that we have in the Paverpol range, or cheesecloth. but I always found that people had a lot of issues, especially when it's their first time, but they do want to make a fairy. It was difficult. So I started trying to come up with other ways to do that. And then, so I'm going to show you how you can make wings just by using a paper towel. And this is the start of your wing. So you could even, this is done with Paverpol transparent and wire. You can do it with paper towel and do it in transparent. But if I have another color sculpture like this one, so the wings were made, how do I hold this? Yeah, so the wings were made exactly the same way with paper towel, Paverpol transparent, and then I just went over it with with gray Paverpol. That's what I used to go over those wings. And it's an easy way, I think, to make wings. And not only wings, you could even use it, for instance, for if you want to make birds. You could even make wings that way and then cover those wings with whatever you're using. This one is, I used Paverpol, Paverplast, and Paversand. But just to get going on those wings, I think it's a simple way. So that's what you're going to see in the video tutorial, how to do this.
Very good. So I'm excited to see that tutorial. Let's watch. And remember, this is the last chance you have to ask questions. So submit them, and then we'll come back with Annette.
Here you see a girl with wings on her back, and I used simple yarn, like this, a metal wire, and yarn spun around it. So this is just cotton, a cotton, it's a bit spiky, so it gives a certain effect. Cotton, you can also use relief decoration or cheesecloth. But I found over the years that this, because it's stretchy and cheesecloth too kind of manipulates a bit, it's not so easy to get a nice tight wing with it. So another solution is using paper towel. And that's what I'm going to show you this in this session, using paper towel to make wings. Another great artist, Paverpol artist, Lise McAlpine, she uses silk, and the silk works almost similar, stunning results. I'm going to work with white and transparent Paverpol because I can paint them later with any color, either acrylic paint or just go over it with Paverpol bronze or black or whatever I'm using for the project. As for wires, the bigger the sculpture, the sturdier the wire. This one is pretty big, I showed her before. I use a bigger gauge for that. This is 16 gauge. It's a little bit more difficult to bend. But for smaller sculptures, I would use a lower gauge or a thinner gauge. Let's put it that way. And if you buy wire, the higher the number, the sturdier it is. If you buy galvanized wire. So this is gauge 16, it's quite sturdy. This is gauge 14 and is more pliable. And I'm gonna make the wings for a small sculpture, so I'm gonna use this one, the 14 gauge. Take my wings and I'm gonna outline it with, I'm gonna trace the wing, but adding a seam to it with a pen. Just roughly. That's one. And that's going to be the other one. And now I'm going to cut in, so the blue needs to stay out. You don't want to see that because it's transparent Paverpol that we're using, so you would see that. So take that out. Or I mean, when you cut it, you leave that out. Because you would see it, but it would also probably bleed a little bit, the glue. Well, just double checking. That was this one. And so I need to go in the same direction, this way. And well, this way, or so I should have paid more attention, better attention. I think it's this. No. Oh boy. This way. Okay. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna place my wings like this on the table, and that's how they're gonna go on. So now I take my Paverpol transparent, and I'm gonna brush 2 layers, sorry, 1 layer on each side. So take your brush, and I hold it, and I go in one direction only, because if I do this, it starts to wobble and your paper might break. So one direction only, and not too much, because it has a few, you know, layers, and it might start to tear or come apart. And like I said, you can also do it with silk or cotton. It's just that sometimes I even like to leave them transparent as these are. They come out transparent, and sometimes that's neat too, depending on what kind of figure you make. Okay, one side is done. Have skewers at hand, clean skewers, and flip them over and do the other side. See, I can already see that it wants to separate those 2 layers. Same thing. And Paverpol transparent is a little bit thicker than other colors like Paverpol black or bronze, because Paverpol transparent is also the base for all other Pavercolors. So when you make black Paverpol, they take Paverpol transparent, add pigment, and they dilute the pigment in water, so it makes the Paverpol thinner. The water makes it thinner. So for that reason, you will always experience that you think, oh, that's a thick Paverpol, but that's how it is. The other ones are thinner because water was added. So you always can dilute Paverpol transparent a little bit, but not more 6% than of its volume. So if you have 100 grams of Paverpol, you can add about 6 grams of water. I'm gonna flip these back because I know myself, otherwise I don't have them in the right direction. Oh, I see a little bit of blue here. I didn't cut that well, but you can tear that off. Here too, sometimes 2. And flip it over. Okay. Wing comes back. And this one too. And when you do this, make sure that you have enough or the same width of seam on both sides. Now this is a bit, this is a bit more detailed. Now you're going to use 2 skewers, or I use 2 skewers, to flip the seam over the wire. That's why I use galvanized wire. If you have just metal wire and it comes in touch with something that's liquid, it starts to rust. So then you would get rust color on your Paverpol transparent. And once the first part is over, see, like that, it becomes easier. And take your time because you're not in a rush. Can you see that really well? I think so. So fold it tight over your, and you don't lift it, you see that I'm not lifting it. Here I don't really care so much what happens. So, other side, doesn't matter where you start, just tight over that wing. Oh, there's a hair. Tight over the wing, or tight over the metal wire. Oh, different side. And when you work with silk, it would be exactly the same way. Now, maybe I'm gonna leave this on. I can always cut it later. For now, I'm gonna leave it. Okay, one down. One to go. See, and now it's nice that the wings are the metal wire is fairly flat on the table, because if it would poke up, then it's not so easy to fold the paper over. Start, push it down. And And again, I'm gonna leave this little point. I'm not touching them. The only thing I'm gonna do now is use my hair dryer and yeah, dry it. A little bit, not too much, not totally dry, because I also have the back side to do. So on low setting, it's an oldie. I think it's 14 years old, this hair dryer. And after a minute or two, you can feel it that this side, because it's so thin, it already starts to dry. Let me clean my hands and then I'll show you that I don't have Paverpol transparent when I touch it. And I also see that the color is not shiny anymore, it's dull, and that means that it's drying. So when I touch it now, I don't have transparent on my hands. That means that we're getting there. So I'm not going to go any further. The only thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to lift it slowly but surely and then blow the air under the wing and let the wing come loose by itself. So I'm not pulling it, I let the air take it off. Now that it's loose, I can simply do the other side. And since it's because, like I said, it's so thin, it dries really fast. I've got a bowl with water here and a rag to dry my hands every now and then. Well, it's still a bit soft. I mean soft, damp. And if, for instance, you weren't tight enough around the edges, you can use your fingers now. And again, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. I think I'm going to leave it for now. So lay this on the table, do the same with the other one. Now when when you lift it, because Paverpol is a polymer, a plastic-like substance, you might see little thingies on the side. I always say just wait until it's completely dry, and then you can simply pull those off. So I'm not gonna fuss too much with it while it's still wet. The smaller you make the seam, the less it would shine through. I don't mind seeing a thicker, a more solid white on the edges because it gives it more, depth. On the other hand, if I were to paint Paverpol bronze on it, you wouldn't see that anyway. So it depends on how you're going to finish it. But the more experience you get, you can cut the seam really, really thin, and then you just roll it over almost. So this one is fairly dry. And now I can, with my finger, I can take off those little plastic flubbies. And that's how you make wings with paper towel. And now I'll show you how to attach them to a wireframe. So when you want to attach the wings to a body, the bigger the body, the more important it is that those wings are really very well secured. I took the end of the wire and I doubled it up a little bit. And what you can do is you take the end, use some tape. This is just a wire, the back of a sculpture, and simply tape the wire to the spine. You can do that with a smaller piece to start and then later add a bigger piece of tape to it, like this. And once it sits, I can very easily maneuver it in different directions. See, and I still have here at the back, I have some space. Yeah, and that's one way to attach the wings. You can still manipulate it later, moving it this way, moving it forward. And like I said, I would finish it with a colored Paverpol, and then you don't see the seam anymore. If you're doing it in transparent, you just make your overlap on the back of the wing wider so that it overlaps and it's completely white. But when you go over it with colored Paverpol, you won't see that anymore. So for bigger sculptures, I would definitely do it this way and then fold it. See, for instance, this one is a bigger one, and the wings were attached to the body frame. They come out, and then you make sure that no water gets in the area where the wings came out. So you really have to make sure that it's very well attached. I'll show you this sculpture in another part of the video today. And then another way of doing it, this is already foiled, half foiled, see, was ready to go. So I just taped the upper body a little bit. And then I'm going to show you how you can also attach the wing to a taped body. I taped this top part. Again, this was doubled up. I'm simply holding it in a way that I think, oh, that's going to look cute. And then same thing, it doesn't have to be in the perfect spot yet, but I hold it here, take my tape, and first make sure you secure it so it sits. And once it sits, you have your hands free to either move them around or maybe cut off that very end of the wire so that it doesn't completely stick out. Use your pliers, and the rest gets taped. And when you tape it, it needs to be tight on that body. And once it sits, once she's finished, you can still manipulate that wing in all sorts of directions because it's still very flexible. And if it's not so flexible anymore, use your hairdryer and start warming it up so it gets softer. and then you can change it again. So that's a very basic way of making wings. Another way to make wings is using aluminum foil, and I can quickly show you how you could do that. I already did one wing with aluminum foil. For the other side, people that know me know that I like to wrinkle foil first before I fold it over. I always find I can manipulate it a little bit better and squeeze it better. But you know what? That it's also a personal thing. So I wrinkle it, fold it open. And now the trick is I don't want to change the shape too much because they were kind of similar. So I lay it down here and then I'm gently folding over the foil, making sure that I don't change that. It might be difficult to see now, but here's my wire, that I don't change the outline of the wire too much. So fold it over, hold it tight, almost like I did with the what's it called? Paper towel. Same way. See? And then flatten it, or don't flatten it. So that's one layer. I would give it maybe 2 to 3 layers. So again, making sure you got it wrinkled. But you start with thinner layers. So like I did one layer first, then the next goes on. Again, don't push it too much because you do want to keep that outline. Because if you use more foil, it becomes a little bit more sturdy. And don't worry if you have, seams here or a little bit more foil than on the other side. I always say texture makes it interesting. If it's too smooth, it becomes boring. Okay. Now, this might be an issue. So usually when I foil, it also depends a bit on how much experience you have, tape the wings and then you don't get, these loose pieces. Because what I would do in the case of having foil on your wings, I would simply brush Paverpol and Paverplast on it. So tape goes on, tight. Doesn't matter which direction you're going, overlapping is fine too. And always when you use tape, rubbing it. And if you have little pieces of foil showing, that's fine, that doesn't matter. I use masking tape, some people use hockey tape, whatever you, try different things and see what you like best. So, it doesn't really matter. And then when you have masking tape and foil, then too, you can still manipulate the wings a little bit in different shapes. Now what I would do, I would brush on a layer of Paverpol, both sides, dry it, then mix Paverpol and Paverplast together and brush on a good thick coat on both sides, dry it and do that again. So one layer of just Paverpol, I like that because it makes it sticky. And then the thicker layer of Paverpol and Paverplast will adhere better. And then one more, the last coat, the second coat, so to say, of Paverpol and Paverplast. That is to prevent that you didn't have any fin, pinholes, anywhere. Yeah, and then, yeah, that's how you do wings. You might have more questions, but that will come. But, oh yeah, and how to mix Paverpol and Paverplast. If you're not familiar how to do that, you can find a video on my website. If you go to orangewireart.ca, click on the shop, find Paverplast in additives. And if you find the product Paverplast, there's in the description is a little video on how to mix the two. So yeah, that's how you make wings. Or this is a way to make wings. One of the many.
Very cool. Very good tutorial. Are you ready for some questions?
Yeah, sure.
Evany wants to know if you can use acrylic colors with Paverpol products.
If you can use what, sorry?
Acrylic paint.
Use acrylic paint to do what? Sorry, one more time.
So yeah, can you use acrylic colors with Paverpol products?
Yes, so you can either use acrylic products, acrylic paints to color your sculptures. You could also use acrylics if you want to color your Paverpol transparent. But you have to make sure it's a good quality, because we normally use Paver colors, that's good solid dyes. But yeah, acrylics can be used.
This one I think is about the owl on the wood. Memory Bradley is asking, do you glue the wooden posts to the stone, or are you drilling through it?
Oh, thinks she's referring to the posts that I have outside. I drill the wood, so I have those, how do you call them? Those 90-degree angle metal plates that they use in construction. And that's what I use to drill holes in the paving stone and onto the posts, if that's what she meant.
Okay. Maria, if you are using galvanized wire for the wings, does that mean all sculptures begin with galvanized wire?
No, usually, you can use any wire. Let's start with that. Any wire is good. In my workshops, I use for, making figurines like this, what you see behind me. I use electrical wire because it's coated and it has a solid copper core. So that means that the inside of that electrical wire has one thick copper wire that makes it bendable and keep that position. But you could also use any other wire. It doesn't have to be electrical, it doesn't have to be galvanized. It's just whatever you use, think about it, what it could do. Because I also like to use metal wire that rusts. I use it. But if you use it on a sculpture that has transparent Paverpol or a light color Paverpol, then the rust will start to show through. So in this case, if you, for instance, wanted to keep the wings transparent, then if I were to use metal, you would start to see bleeding rust. So any wire is good as long, and I want to stress that out, the bigger your sculpture, the sturdier that wire needs to be. Because as you might know or might not know, Paverpol, it is a polymer, so plastic products in the sun tend to soften. So for instance, the hair you see behind me, his ears are outlined with wires. If I didn't have a good solid wire in there and he sits outside and the snow falls on it and then the sun comes out and then it's heavy, right? Because snow is heavy, then those ears would start to droop. Now, the bigger the sculpture is, the more risk you run in having things going down. Whether it's snow or the sun, it takes it down because it softens it a bit. So if you have a good, solid, an appropriate thickness of wire in your sculpture, then that's not an issue. It would get soft in the sun because the sun heats things up and softens a bit, but your sculpture wouldn't change at all. But if you had a very flimsy wire in those ears and it sits outside, then trust me, I've done that 15 years ago, then things start to come down in the sun. So yeah, make sure you've got the right wire for your projects.
Very good. Anna Deco Art, very beautiful work. Annette, how do you get the reddish metal effect? What colors do you use?
The reddish metal effect. So maybe she's referring to something like this, maybe. Copper, copper colored paint. So yeah, if I have a black sculpture, then I use copper that gives it a reddish color. Sometimes I highlight the copper even again with bronze to give it just two tones. I always find that two tones on the sculpture really brings out the depth. Other than that, rust. Maybe I sometimes use. I'm not sure if you can see it in the back there. That rooster is rust, but I use Paverpol colors, so the powder pigments. And when the Paverpol or paint is still a bit, for instance, the rooster, he's black. I paint him a little bit brownish. And then when the paint is still acrylic paint, when it's still wet, I dab on some powder pigments. And it can be champagne or a rust color or a sienna, makes a beautiful rust effect. So that's another way of doing it. So as long as those powders can adhere to your paint, or you mix those powders with varnish, then it becomes a paint and then you can brush it on. I hope that answers the question.
Sally Mason, could you just put a paper towel on both sides of the wire and Paverpol together and then cut fringes in the overlap to make it look more feathery? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, see, you already get the new ideas from this because, yeah, that's, you take it however you want to do it. So, yeah. And a nice thing is, yeah, I've got those same rings here again. Even when it's dry, because it's paper, if she says those fringes, yeah, it's still very easy to cut. Don't wait 2 days, but for sure, after a couple of hours, you can still do that. What I forgot to mention in my video about those wings, so when you create those outlines of the wings, I'm not sure if you can see the ends of my wire here, because if you use a thinner wire, that wire by itself might not be suitable to go against the back and keep it in place. So I twist those two wires together. Mm-hmm. And another question earlier said, can you use Paverpol to glue things together? Yeah. This was a separate ring and this was a separate ring. And when it was still damp, I just laid them together flat and I pushed it down and now it's attached.
Very cool. Rena is asking, will the paper become rock hard or will it be pliable?
It's, let me see. So this one is now maybe 2 or 3 weeks old. And now it's pretty hard now. It's only when I get my hairdryer out and heat it up, I would be able to bend it again. And then probably I would need to keep it in a certain position to keep it there. Because Paverpol has a memory, so it bounces back. So yeah, use your hairdryer. This was done 2 days ago, and this one is still pliable. So, but it only has transparent, one coat of transparent. As to this one, had Paverpol transparent, and then I went over it with gray colored Paverpol.
So cool. Lisa Bitier, wing proportion about the same length as the trunk of the armature?
See, this is where I wing it. Literally where I wing it. Well, I always say, yeah, let's see, this This is the length. Yeah,
Yeah,
probably.
about that.
Sitting from top to head, yeah, probably the same. But sometimes, sometimes it's good to just go overboard a little bit. Um, I always say it in classes too. Sometimes maybe you want to give it even a bigger one, because sometimes when we try to imitate a real person, you get very focused of getting it right. And as to if you exaggerate things, then it doesn't matter how big things are. Then it's a statement. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but yeah.
Yeah, it does. Liz Bonser, do you always place your wings right onto the armature, or can we wait when the figure is most done and then attach? Reason is that when you want to dress the figure, it might be difficult to go around the wings.
Yeah, it's so that's why in the video tutorial, I think it depends. If you make a big sculpture that goes outside, let's say it's 3 or 4 feet and it's getting wings, then I think it's very important, although it's not convenient, but then I think it's very important to have this attached to the wireframe. For the same reason as I explained earlier, if snow gets on those wings outside, it's, and they are just attached down here, so in the back of the sculpture, after you dressed it, then I think it's way more vulnerable. And with a smaller sculpture, you might get away with it by just adding it after the clothes or after the wrapping or whatever. But because the smaller ones, if snow falls on it, it doesn't have so much of an impact, or the sun. But if you go big, if it's a big sculpture, I would say it's a hassle, but attach this part, attach that to the metal, to your wireframe, then start foiling and then start giving it clothes. And yeah, it's a hassle, but it's gonna be worth your while. So indoors, small figures, doesn't really matter when you do it. Outdoors, bigger ones, definitely go on the wireframe first.
Elena wants to know if you use tape on your figures.
I know Lise Sincere, my dear friend, she uses it. So I started using it too because she really likes it. And I'm too impatient for it. So I have used it, and it's great because it makes a sculpture, when you brush Paverpol on it, makes it really, really hard. But it also requires a little bit more, it takes a little bit more time, and I'm impatient. So I still use masking tape.
I get that, because even the cutting is harder. So yeah, I get that. Elena also wants to know, can we see a close-up of the figurine with the big hat and green dress behind you?
Yeah. No, this way. So that's how we started with what is your inspiration. I had lots of these carolers' head at one Christmas time, paper mache, and I didn't use them for the longest time. And I thought, okay, now I need to come up with a project to do something with it. So sure enough, then I was out of carolers' head because everybody wanted to make one. See, burlap, this is relief decoration. And you know what? There's no pattern here, right? Just tear off pieces of relief decoration and the messier, the more folds you create, the nicer it will look with paint. This is just a ball of strips of t-shirt. And then
the boots.
For the lace, for the shoes, I used just shoelace kind of material.
Very cool, very, very cool.
Yeah, I like it too. She's a favorite. Yeah,
Yes,
and
for sure.
easy to make. Yeah, easy to make because you don't have the skirt is just strips of burlap that when it's still wet, it wants to do its own thing. So you use pins to keep that burlap in a certain position, and then I stuffed plastic bags in the pockets and left that in for a couple of days. And now, see, she's old. She's maybe 2 or 3 years old, and it still stands out this way with all these little pockets.
It's very pretty. Bree wants to know, if the hair ears drooped from snow, would they bounce back to the original shape once the snow was gone?
No, you have to help them back in their old position. So I would bring them in first, dry it, then you start using your hair dryer to soften up those the Paverpol again for the ears, for instance, and then you slowly bring it back in the right position, and then you probably have to support it with a stick underneath it so it stays there where you want it, because otherwise it would come down again. And then, yeah, and then the question is, if you attach the wire inside the hair really good, then I think that would solve the problem. If not, then it probably comes down again.
And Joanne, the tall birds that are on your left, what did you use for the long legs? Wire or what?
Yeah, so these, that's the, I love using, it's called rebar tie wire. So they in construction they use it to tie the rebar together, and this stuff rusts. So if I coated it with Paverpol, then it doesn't rust anymore. But yeah, so these legs, lengths of um, four lengths of rebar tie wire per leg. The feet, I keep them separated, and then here they're all bunched together, those four wires, taped, and then they go into the little birdie, and that's how they were both done.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Wow. I mean, I'm inspired. I'm ready. I'm going to start with that frog, though. My favorite, but it's amazing. So, Annette, any final words for our friends here today?
Well, final words is uh, don't put pressure on yourself when you make something. It's all about the process. Have fun. If you're a little bit more, detail orientated, I always say make your foil figure and the masking tape part. Do that one day and then leave it. Come back the next day and look at it again, and then you start working on it. That's
Very,
my tip for people. And other than that, you know what? Sky is the limit with this product. Really, it's. I used to make only figurines, and now I'm into whatever I can find. Right? Because I don't know if you saw this. You can make bowls. See, driftwood, a ball, a hollow ball, relief decoration. I mean, whatever you see around you, you probably can make it with Paverpol. That's what it comes down to.
And Annette, thank you so much for taking the time for being here with us and for filming the city tour and your studio tour and the tutorial, of course. I do hope to have you back here very soon, okay?
Thank you for giving the opportunity. Thanks, Shahar.
Thank
Bye,
you very
everyone.
much. And again, for you too, thank you so much. Have you paid attention to the websites? Those are the places where you can not only get the product, but you can get information about certification for instructors, and of course, Orange Wire Art. .ca with if you want to get in touch with Annette, and I'm sure you will want to do that. Other than that, I have to say it was a pleasure having you here. I hope you have enjoyed this interview. My next interview here is July 29th with Gwen Rousseau. You don't want to miss that one either, because it's going to be amazing as well. By now, you're probably thinking, my gosh, right? There's so many things I can make with this. Because just looking at what Annette has done with the products, I'm sure your head is full of ideas. Don't forget that all interviews stay wherever you're watching them. Of course, if you go to Mondo.com, you will see all of them. We have interviewed several artists already, and you can always watch and re-watch them. I know I do that because, for example, I want to make that frog. I'm going to come back and look at that part of the interview several times for sure, because it's a very, chubby and happy frog. So don't forget, Take a look at all the other interviews. Come back here July 29th, same time for us to be talking with Gwen. And check out the websites you saw today, okay? Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much. See you next time.